I don't know who else is coming. We're missing quite a few people, but that's okay. It's the kind of day outside, which most of us would probably rather be out there. So we'll go ahead and come to order. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome. This is the Assembly Rules Committee. Today's June 12th, 2025. We're on the calendar from 1 to 3 o'clock. Today it's 1:06 p.m. We'll start with introductions.
Zach Johnson.
Aaron Baldwin-Day.
Daniel Volin.
Anna Brawley.
Christopher Constant.
Yarrow Silvers.
So I also have excused today, Mr. Myers and Mr. Kirker and Eagle River. They're having a meeting with their State House delegation. And also Mr. Martinez, who's at a conference. And so I don't know where everyone else is. I assume some folks will trickle in as we're going. We also are joined by legislative services, our attorneys, we have the clerk's office, and a handful of members from the administration, the ombudsman, and the police department. Hello, welcome. So I don't have an in-depth report to give today. There are a number of items on the agenda. In fact, there's one item that's not on the agenda that should be here, and that's just a discussion on that was requested on work sessions. And so who and how and why, so we'll add that, but if we have time, I won't get into that now. I'll keep my comments really short. The mayor is not here right now. She may attend at some point. It's pretty busy. So we'll start with the report from the clerk.
All right, bear with me. I have a couple pages from Jamie. So, per the Anchorage Municipal Code, the municipal clerk's office is responsible for, among other things, providing administrative and logistical support to the assembly and its individual members, attending and staffing assembly meetings, work sessions, and committee meetings, supporting the assembly's boards and commissions, conducting all election-related functions, and administering certain municipal licensing programs. In the month of May, our currently 12-person team managed a high volume of work across all of these core functions. So for meeting coordination, the clerk's office coordinated setup for 3 assembly meetings, 7 assembly committee meetings, 9 assembly work sessions, 3 board and commission meetings, including the inaugural meeting of the Public Naming Commission. A quorum of members were confirmed as of April 9th. This work included reserving rooms, publicly noticing meetings, setting up technology, printing and distributing meeting materials, and ensuring accessibility for public attendance. In addition, we ensured public notice of 24 scheduled public hearings. Following these meetings, the office processed 123 pieces of legislation, amending 6, and finalized 4 full sets of minutes, 2 assembly, 2 board and commission. Assembly meetings member support. We assisted 4 assembly members with travel logistics for a total of 9 trips, helping initiate, arrange, or complete travel processes, including the submission of expense reports. Additionally, we secured contracts with 5 new legislative aides on behalf of assembly members they support. Audio-visual infrastructure. As part of our codified responsibility to provide logistical support to the assembly and its meetings, the clerk's office continues to lead on all audio-visual efforts related to assembly chambers and 155. This includes not only setup for meetings, but ensuring systems are fully functional for in-person and remote participation and live streaming. Under other duties as assigned, Matt Farina has been diligently leading the upgrade of the AV production room and chambers, addressing technical issues like grounding faults, color distortion, and audio feedback. The final phase, replacement microphones, will be installed after the June 24th meeting during the 3-week break. Matt has also coordinated vendor support to address audio issues in room 155. For elections, in May, the clerk's office processed 4 initiative petitions for 2 separate initiatives. 3 petitions were submitted for a proposed initiative to protect Fish Creek from sewer lines. 2 were denied due to sponsor ineligibility, and the 3rd was withdrawn. A 4th version was submitted June 4th and is currently under review. A 4th petition proposing a civilian police review board and an inspector general for the Anchorage Police Department was reviewed and ultimately rejected based on advice from Muni Legal. It did not identify whether the initiative was a charter amendment, a code amendment, or an advisory vote, and thus not meeting the code requirement to provide the verbatim text of the measure. And last but not least, to licensing. Our licensing team processed and finalized 10 marijuana licenses, 21 liquor licenses, 30 business licenses, primarily roving vendors and private investigators. And that is all I have.
All right, thank you. Next, we'll roll over to our friends in the law department.
Matthew Hurt, Legislative Counsel for the Assembly. First of all, I'd like to wish Dean a speedy recovery as he's out of the office. He is back working remotely and anticipates being able to get back in the office either next week or the week after. Biggest development, as many of you know, we welcomed our intern, Zachary Christie, who is a rising 2L at the University of Idaho School of Law, and has already made a great impact in our office and is very welcomed and a great part of the team. So if you haven't met him yet, please meet him when you get a chance. As far as workload, we finished out the month of May having submitted 6 ordinances, 3 resolutions, having done 12 floor amendments and 2 laid on the table supplemental items. As for the month of June, we have already are on pace to beat that with having submitted 4 ordinances, 2 resolutions, 9 floor amendments, and 4 laid on the table items. And having been the only attorney at the last meeting, we felt every inch of those. So it was a lot of fun. That brings us to a year-to-date total of 32 ordinances, 10 resolutions, 82 floor amendments, 10 laid on the table new items, and 22 laid on the table supplemental items. And that concludes my report.
Yeah, same song in my head, Partridge in a Pear Tree. So, okay, thank you. Next, the Ombudsman. Anything to add?
Thank you, Chris. Just a little brief report. To date, our office, we've entered 375 contacts with the public so far this year. We have about 12 open cases. One of the things that our office has worked on recently, in 2013, 2014, the Ombudsman's office was part of a working group that was put together by the Assembly to work on a major rewrite of the towing and impound codes. And one of the things that we heard from so many constituents at the time was it was bad enough that they could not afford to reclaim their vehicle, they would lose their vehicle. But because they didn't have the money to pay to access their vehicle, they were losing important personal possessions. And we heard stories of people losing veterans' documents, Social Security cards, medical records, and even prescriptions. So that was one of the things that the working group was very intentional about recommending to the Assembly, was that whether it was a vehicle that was impounded by the municipality or it was a private party impound, the vehicle owner would get a one-time free access to retrieve their personal property. So the Assembly passed that. So we were troubled to learn several years later, we'd been referring constituents to code enforcement, which dealt with these issues. And we were surprised to learn, we referred somebody to code enforcement. They came back to our office and said, code enforcement says that I do not get a one-time free access. So we met with the Department of Law, and their opinion was that that provision in the code did not apply to vehicles that were impounded under AMC 9.28, major traffic offenses. And so we met with the Department of Law. We understood the intent of the code, but maybe the code wasn't clear enough. So we sent a report to the Assembly, an investigative report to the Assembly. Assembly member Rivera in August 2024 introduced AO 2024-77, which clarified in the code that that provision of a one-time free access applied to vehicles towed under 9.28. And the Assembly passed the ordinance as amended on September 10th, 2024. So we were a little surprised earlier this year to hear from somebody that an APD contractor was charging persons $150 access fee to retrieve their belongings from vehicles impounded by the municipality. So we met with the Department of Law. The assistant municipal attorney verified that the tow company was charging the fee. And their contention was they were meeting the intent of the code because they would apply the $150 to the total bill for the towing and impound and storage. And my response was, I don't think so, because they were charging them $150 up front to access their vehicle and retrieve their belongings, which just appear, then trying to apply it to the overall bill, it just seemed like an effort to squeeze money out of poor people. So we worked with the Department of Law and APD's contract administrator, and that contractor is no longer charging that fee for the first time access. So it's one of the things our office, we've learned over the years is just because the assembly passes a code or the department says they're going to do something, you have to follow up. So in this instance, we really appreciated the Department of Law and APD's contract administrator for working with us to correct this problem.
All right, thank you. And Legislative Services.
All right, we have a couple new things introduced recently. Ally just updated the press releases that we send out. We've been working to differentiate media that comes out that's approved by the whole body, something that comes out after you've passed something, versus when you are trying to promote or educate on legislation that the body hasn't voted on. And so we've come up with a process like they do in the legislature of developing a sponsor statement. So it's clear that it's coming from the 1 to 3 members, and you can, use promotional language to it, but it doesn't look like the Legislative Service Office is promoting it or that the whole body is promoting it. So Ali is introducing that into our press releases, and we've already started doing that on our web updates. We're also working on promoting, formalizing our civic education work to do more of that and create a more formal program for that, working with some partners in the muni and the community. We issued an RFQ for the Public Safety Task Force and have selected a firm. I don't think I can announce it because we're still signing contracts and everything, but we did have, I think, four firms submit proposals, and they're all really good. So that was a nice process. And then in terms of our personnel, we have an intern too, Martin Carmen. Hopefully you've seen him around. He goes to Mount Edgecombe High in Sitka, but he grew up and lives in Anchorage, and he's a great addition to our team. We're loving working with him. We are looking for shadowing opportunities for him. If any of you would be willing to take him out to coffee and tell him more about your work and how you got into it, he is looking for those opportunities. And then last year in the 2025 budget, you approved money for an aide to serve the full body, but it wasn't enough to hire a person full time. And so we decided to do a little test case, and we on contract are hiring Michaela Wilson, who was a former aide for Daniel Volin, and she works for Representative Mina right now. And she helped when she worked in Daniel Volin's office, she helped him develop a constituent email newsletter. And so we have hired her on contract when she's not down in Juneau for the session, from now until this fall, winter, to see if we can help you all more with your individual communications and maybe like provide seasonal talking points and phone numbers of, oh, it's pothole season. Here is a refresher on some numbers to share with your community councils and email responses and that sort of thing. So she'll be coming on board next week to help us with that on a contract. And then Jennifer is taking over the youth representative program. Heather McAlpine and the ombudsman did an amazing job getting that off the ground, and we're so grateful to her. But now it was taking over all of her other ombudsman work. And so now we have more capacity. So Jennifer is going to be the advisor for that program. And we had, Martin, how many applications do we have? 10 applications. So we're sorting through those. And as you may recall, the assembly does a work session to interview the top 3 to 5 applicants. And we have done it later in the summer in the past. We're trying to push it up so we can get them all onboarded before school starts. That is our updates.
All right, thanks. And we'll dive right into the business because this one may go a little bit long. I would note for the record at 1:15, Mr. President joined us. So the first item under unfinished business, an overview and planning discussion for recognition resolutions. I'll hand this to Jasmine to start.
Yeah, so I can give sort of an overview. So I just wanted to state that it wasn't the intent to remove recognition resolutions. That was never what we were going for. We had a few goals when I brought this up, and I'll just sort of go over them. So one was to help mitigate when we're getting 10 or 11 resolutions on an already packed agenda by finding a way to not pull and read them all through other opportunities. To present them and to look at more community engagement opportunities. Second, we wanted to review the resolution list we have and see which one members are actually interested in. As we have perpetually pushed out the same ones every year, it also allowed an opportunity for members that didn't want to be on a resolution to let us know ahead of time so that they're not having to say on the dais that they don't want to be included. The last thing was just to have an open discussion and get us thinking about them. Like I said, we have 43 of them and we've just sort of pushed them out every year without the body reviewing them. So we just wanted to open that discussion and that opportunity.
So, and I will add, there are just a couple times of the year when we have a high press of business and a large number of these resolutions. And so I did send some notes in on ones that I thought we could move away from, some of the more kind of rote and de facto ones that just come up and we don't even have people who really want to receive them, or we have the same person come every year and say the same thing. So that's been part of the conversation. I do really, if you haven't had a chance to fill this out, ask you to fill out. There's a form that the clerk had sent out that would identify the ones you want to be listed as sponsors. I think we've sent this to the administration, but I know we haven't. I want to make sure that the mayor gets an opportunity for at least the ones that are kind of regular to say, yes, please include me on those. So we don't have to go through the kabuki of getting it updated on the dais. And then that would just leave the kind of pop-up ones to address. And maybe we could address that at the Friday meetings when we do our coordinating, because mostly they will be on the agenda by the addendum. And so that's one way to streamline and clean things up. And we're also looking for interested parties to come in and receive them. And so I don't know if we need to go through much more. Anyone want to kind of opine on this while we are here, or I'll pivot? Okay, I do have Anna. So first Cameron, then Anna. Go ahead, Cameron.
So, yeah, just.
Mike.
Just, we brought this up before, but a question about is it required that we read the entire resolution into the record? Could we read like just the top line? That seems to be like, from my perspective, I mean, it's long. I think some cases it's great because you get a lot of information, but I'm just curious about that because it's published, people can read it. And yeah, I didn't know if there was a requirement that we read the entire thing to the record, if that was an option for us to be able to move through them quicker and not have some of these challenges. Just wanted to put that on the record.
So there's no code requirement that we read any of them or not. And so it's a customary practice of the body to do honorary resolutions. And so, yes, we could do narrower ones. I think it might create some challenges in the context of some would get a full reading because others are interested in it, others might not. Why and how? And so we could have some more conversation about that. And I think there are a number of them, and I think there's a box on here, maybe it isn't on this list, where we don't read them necessarily. We pass them and then members can take them and read them there. I think that we can do a better job about that. And I think there have been 2 or 3 in the last 6 weeks since we started this conversation that we've just passed and then taken and read instead of using that time. And so I don't know how we would get to only read a portion of this versus another. And, some of them are 2 pages long.
Yeah.
I don't have the attention span for it.
All items, we read partial you have to read part of it into the record, and then the chair
title.
says waive reading, right? And
Yeah.
so we don't read all the whereases of every single thing that comes before us, a resolution, things like that.
Yeah, no, and so that's just the title that the code requires the reading of. And
Right,
so, and the
right.
title is descriptive, but it doesn't have any of the
I mean, it would be
context.
interesting to go to a stance of not reading them into the record unless it's asked for, unless there was a desire. But you're right. I mean, I think there is a fairness issue and that sort of thing. But as a practice, it seems to me generally not necessary to read an entire resolution into the record and to be in such a presentation kind of way that we still have people come up, we still have people speak, we still have those sort of things. But that's just a thought. So we don't need to
So-
spend very much time on this, but just wanted to make sure that
And-
that's one of the considerations.
One of the boxes on the list is, would you like to be the primary sponsor or just added as a sponsor or not at all? And so I think for those that have an identified primary sponsor, maybe that conversation is best for them to decide how much is readable or not. Because that might be a way to filter and sort. I think that there is some value in ensuring that and we'll come to this when we talk about work sessions, have someone who owns the thing if we're going to do the thing, someone who's invested in it enough that they're going to take the time and effort to do it and not just be a kind of a mechanical procedure that just happens because of that. And so that, I think that there's something we can sort into about that. So I have a few people in the queue now. First Anna, then Aaron, and then Zach.
Yeah, I have a couple points to add to the discussion. But in terms of receiving, I think just another couple set of things to flag. One is I do think we really should start taking these to other events for two reasons. One, because sometimes it's a lot to ask people to come to the meeting and then they're just standing there for 5 minutes. Not to say that there isn't value in that. I think there is a lot of value. But also to the extent that some of these are community-based events or groups or whatever, and there's something to bring to the space that they are, celebrating an event or whatever it is, that makes a lot more sense to me for a lot of these. One example is Alaska Municipal League. We brought it to the conference this year, presented the resolution. It was a formality, but we host that event every year, and we are one of the biggest members of that organization. So so a lot of these I think would have almost more value somewhere else, and that would also save time in our meetings. The other thing is I've specifically around inviting people. For example, the AAPI month resolution, I reached out to a lot of community groups who I know, are essentially Asian American folks. And so it is fun to bring a lot of those folks together. So maybe just thinking, and, strategically about when to do that or whether there is an event. For example, we could have read that resolution at the Pacific Flag Day event on May 31st. And some of us were there, but we weren't like part of the programming. But so if we think ahead, we can plan those things into their calendar as well if they're willing. For example, there's a legislative citation there too for POWA, their 20th anniversary. The other thing is I feel like I'm always sending the same block of text whenever I do reach out to folks for invitation. And so it makes me think maybe one little comms thing that we could do is create a one sheet with instructions, because I think people don't understand our meetings. They show up and they're sitting there and they're like, did I miss it? Right. And they don't have a lot of expectation about what it looks like, or they think, oh, are all of us going to be able to speak? Will we have a chance to speak? Right. So I think maybe just communicating that instead of it being a one-off every single time that any of us reaches out, then we could say like, here's a little one sheet that says, here's what to expect and when to show up. And I always say, we don't know exactly, but here's the time frame. So I think that would also help for those ones that we want folks to come and saves a little bit of time. And then I had a separate issue on recognition resolutions, but I'll come back because we're on this topic. So thank you.
Go ahead, then Aaron.
Yeah, I was going to offer that it might make sense, I would hope that every resolution would have a primary sponsor. And to me, it makes sense that the primary sponsor would take the time or invest the time to just create some comments about the resolution itself in advance. And then they would read the title of the resolution and then offer their comments while the presentation is happening on the floor, but not necessarily read the entire resolution. And it feels like that if someone isn't really willing to take that additional step of the personal commentary on the resolution, then maybe it's not a resolution we should be offering.
I think if I go through the list, most of them do have some one person, but not all of them do. So, Zach.
Yeah, thanks. And we've discussed this before, but I just want to make sure it still stays part of the conversation if we're discussing how to use our time efficiently around these resolutions, is maybe setting some expectations or ceiling on how long the recipients have to talk about it, right? So we're talking about, do we want to spend 1 or 2 minutes reading the whole resolution? I mean, the reality is where we really lose time is when people come up and spend 10 or 15 minutes talking about it after. And it's not to begrudge them. I don't think they necessarily realize we have 100 more things to do that evening, but either setting some expectations there, and maybe we say that different resolutions and different organizations get more time than others, right? But I think some parameters around there would be helpful.
Yeah, and my memory of all of this is that there are just a few where people talk over length. Mostly people talk very briefly, and maybe a bunch of people a little bit. And so, but it is a consideration that's on the list for sure. Okay, Anna.
Yeah, the other thing I just wanted to bring up was I was always curious kind of how these got assigned. And as I understand it, it's staff, unless somebody requests it. But I think that's another thing to think about. I've never been handed one that I was unwilling to read or go down and present. I don't necessarily have a direct connection to some of them. Other folks may not. And it may not occur to you to ask, can I be assigned to be the person with this, unless it's your thing. So that's another thing just to put on the table, is whether we sign up or just making members aware, ask for ones that you want to talk about or that you want to be the person.
And there is an assignment that's done before the meeting. The clerk has a little cheat sheet for me, but it's probably the most flexible document on the dais. It can change right there, right then. And so don't ever feel like you don't have the right to come up and say, hey, can I do that? Because most people are going to say, yeah, sure. And so assert your position. Go ahead, Cameron.
So just, I actually think that specifically for recognition resolutions, so a different category, right? Lots of resolutions, but recognition resolutions, I really think that we should just require a small box that is a description of the not the title, but just for every one of the resolutions, 3 or 4 sentences saying, here's what this is, here's why it's important, right? That's what's read for every resolution that's a recognition resolution. I would disagree that I think the reading of them is what takes the time. And it's a good, 3 to 5 minutes at least for every one of them. So if we just had, let's do a little text box and if you're responsible for it, maybe you write it and it gets adjusted, but that way it's in there for all of them. And I think it would really save a lot of time, and I think it would make it equitable because everyone would get, and then if there's comments, as Member Baldwin Day said, if there's comments that people want to make in addition to that, but that way it's not this. And the other thing I would just say is the formality of the whereas is really, I think from the public's perspective is like, really, I don't think it adds any value to it, right? I think to be able to say, I move to approve this resolution, and then the person who sponsors whatever just says, this resolution is it's a celebration of this important event, and we really want to recognize this today, That's it. So I think if we did that, it really solved a lot of problems.
So I'll just a little kind of color to that. I think some people do appreciate the formality because this is a formal environment. It's a gaveled in official meeting of the government. So that's one thing. I think there are those who do. And so that's an area of discussion. But what you're specifically saying is some kind of summary drafted of the document that could be read in place of the thing. And so when I hear that, I think work, right? And so someone has to draft that. And so it's not, I know it is that right. Cameron says ChatGPT. That is one variable opportunity subject to hallucination. Suddenly you're going to have somebody who's worked for the Muni for 1,000 years and read it. And so, but that said, it is work. And so if that is the paradigm shift, members have to take on that work because it's not legislative services job or the clerk's job to write a summary of your document, even though they're helping you draft it. And so I just want to protect the staff if we're creating a whole new layer of work to make sure that members understand that it's on us to do that part of it. And so, and I think there is a value. And again, Cameron, I will tell you, ChatGPT comes straight to my mind as long as we're careful in reviewing and making sure we're not, hallucinating collectively into the public record. The other piece, I think that certain resolutions, like this employee's worked for this municipality for 50 years, 30 years, those to me, I do really appreciate the reading of all of that story of that person and everything that they have given to the people of the city. And so I think that it's still a work in progress, but I think the takeaways are make sure we have a sponsor. The sponsors in the short term can work on how much information they want to read. We can come up with a kind of a work plan for implementing summaries, which I don't think is a bad thing. And I bet you there are some legislative bodies that just do that already. They bake in a summary into their legislation. And then we will continue honing in on this process to make sure it consumes less effort. Go ahead, Dana.
So yeah, I think there are ones where I enjoy them being read. I feel like I learn history or it's information I wouldn't otherwise know. And particularly, I think that's more like the one-offs, like the special occasion ones, not necessarily the ones that come up every year, but something special that we want to recognize, or the, you know, the retirements, that kind of thing. I do think that we should still work toward less of these that just come up automatically. And I think just from my personal perspective, others might differ on this. I think some of the informational ones are like, there could be other ways to get that information out to the public, like our website. So the ones that I'm thinking of are Know Before You Dig Day and Secure Your Load Day. Like, okay, like those are important things, but is there is anybody watching our assembly meetings for those resolutions and those takeaways? I don't really think so. So maybe it's more effective to put that in our assembly newsletter rather than do a formal proclamation.
Resolution, yeah, the mayor does
Resolution.
proclamations. Yeah, so, yeah, work in progress, we're not done, but I need to pivot us now to another important conversation, similar venue, work sessions. So work sessions have been an interesting challenge of late. We have a number of contentious items, or maybe items that are complex. Members will ask, hey, I would like a work session on this. The sponsors maybe want to, maybe don't want to. Whose job is it to host and make a work session happen? It's not my job to kind of deliver a work session. It's my job to host in this space and make sure the tech is working and we're following the law and gavelled in and on the record. And we follow the timelines and people get recognized. So there have been a few resolutions, not resolutions, work sessions in the last few months that have come up where in a setting, somehow the clerk gets a note, a work session was requested. And then we schedule it and then nobody knows who was supposed to do what. And so we're getting to a point where we have to come up with some kind of a system to address how work sessions are scheduled and structured and delivered so that we don't find ourselves in a position to not have something to discuss and waste everybody's time getting here. And so I think one of the elements that we've discussed adding to the process is a tentative scheduling with a follow-up checklist of some kind to the requester of the work session. Like, how do you want this delivered? Who is going to deliver it? What are your questions? If it's an item that's handed to us by the administration, that's one thing, right? It's easy enough to ask the department to deliver a work session, bring in your information, and they're really good about it. And so those are never the issue. Really, these issues come when you have a member with a big idea who is either willing or not willing to come in and do a presentation on what it is. And then you have people with questions and need a venue to get those questions answered. And so that's where the struggle is at, figuring out how to do this. And so this is an open conversation. I don't have all the answers. Otherwise, you would have just done it. But we need to figure this out. Daniel.
Yeah, I think so. We had on the repeal of the mandatory ID check, there was somehow a work session requested and scheduled, but the sponsors didn't request it. So we were kind of like, what is going on? We didn't have a presentation prepared. You know, we thought the legislation was pretty simple. We were sort of repealing something we already did. And so I don't really know what the value of the work session would have been regardless, unless somebody else wanted to present. And Scott was out of town. Yarrow had a conflict, had a meeting at that time. So anyway, I think definitely if someone who is not a sponsor wants to have a work session because they want more information, or maybe they're wanting to do an S version or something and present on their ideas, definitely like timely notice to the original sponsors, I think would be necessary so that they can prepare to present their legislation if they'd like to do so.
Yarrow?
I think what I would like to figure out today is like, if there's 3 people on it, how do you make that request without violating the Open Meetings Act?
Through legislative services, the clerk or council. That one's the
Okay.
easy one.
And then if you have questions, can you send those to Legislative Council and can they send those out to the sponsors?
The questions.
Like if you have questions that you want answered in the work session?
Yeah, so I think we can treat this in the same way as we treat questions to the administration. As long as they're going to the clerk for brokering of the questions and answers, then we feel, generally speaking, that indemnifies us from the threat of the perception of a serial meeting. And so, and especially if the answers are delivered in a public forum. So, Mr. Hurt, I see you're pulling that microphone.
Yeah, I mean, one, I just want to reiterate that as long as there are less than 3 sponsors, you're free to contact a sponsor and talk to them directly, as long as you keep below the rule of 3. The other thing that I would say, that now the onus would then shift to the sponsor to make sure that they're not doing a serial meeting with every individual member. With regard to your question about sending questions through the clerk, as the chair stated, yeah, as long as we do that in an open way so that every member has access to the questions. So I would envision it being very similar to the way the questions and answers get posted through an AIM, that the clerk, we could develop some mechanism whereby everybody would receive notice of what the questions were for the sponsor.
Thank you.
All right, then next to have Anna. Oh, yeah. Sure, Anna.
Yeah, I think, and just a note too, I think that is a good idea to collect questions ahead of time. That means you can answer them. There's also the strategic value sometimes of not providing those in advance, right? So it's not a requirement. So just to say there's that aspect of the way we work. I guess a question I want to put on the table, or something to just keep thinking about. We have a number of committees. Those take a lot of time and effort to set up. And we've had kind of what I would say is a little bit less participation in the last couple months. And I'm not pointing fingers. It's literally just because most of us have other jobs, right? It's just the reality that those happen during the workday outside of our regular meetings. But then that's also true for work sessions. If we stack our Fridays with work sessions all the time, then we're in all of those meetings as well. So I think it's just an open question. It's not going to work for everything. There are things that we need work sessions for, but are we going to prioritize using our committees for most of this business, or are we going to say less committee work and more work sessions? Because I think we're getting to the point that we can't do both, and we can't keep continuing on the schedule that we were maybe 6 months ago.
Yeah, there's lots to chew on there. Aaron?
I think Anna opened the door a little bit for what I was going to say, which is I think it's been unclear to me the distinction between referring something to committee versus requesting a work session, and where and to whom a work session is requested. So is that something that has to happen on the dais? Does that happen in an email to the sponsors after the fact? That has felt very murky to me, kind of opaque. And whereas, a referral to committee feels very concrete, but also then as a new member, I think I'm very cognizant of the fact that referring something to a committee means that I am interfering in the agenda of that committee in a way that might be unwelcome by the chairs. So it feels like this really awkward push-pull where I don't necessarily understand what the threshold is for either of those.
So I'll speak to both kind of channels of that conversation briefly. So there are 2 kinds of referrals. One is a formal referral where a vote occurs of the body that says this item is referred to this committee, which kind of takes over the role of the chair in that conversation. It's like this goes and the chair will implement that because it is the direction of the body. And so that's one thing. Then there is the informal referral to the committee where a member would ask the chair, do you have time for this to be heard? And so it wouldn't be like a technical referral per se. The item just would be discussed at the committee, but a referral is common parlance and it works. And so, but just keep in mind, there are two forms of that. One is formal, one is informal. And the formal one is a directive of this body, do this thing. And so the other one, you can work at your kind of your own methods and your own skills to get the item on the table. So I think that every chair would be willing to at least hear from you about whether this can fit on their calendar this month or not. And so the time sensitivity is a factor in that, because sometimes committees get really busy and certain committees always have a packed agenda. And so it's a little bit more of a workflow issue in that case. And connected to that is when introducing legislation, if a member thinks that it will take more briefing and more background work, then you can set the public hearing out a ways. And so that will allow the committee chairs to work on that issue in the time that's good for them, not a super rush because it's not driven by the next meeting that we're convened. And so that takes a little bit more, to just use some terms we've talked about, to be a little less reactive and more proactive in thinking about timelines. And the introduction process, when the thing is in the 10 Gs, is a time when most people finally see a thing. So that's when you're going to start to have perspective on the item. Oh, it's coming and I don't know anything about this. I better get briefed. So then that's the referral. I think most committee chairs are going to be receptive. It just depends on how much is already on the agenda. And if you have, like, say for the enterprise committee, a big, huge set of port projects that are time sensitive, and then this little thing that might get pushed off to the next meeting because we're going to spend $500 million and we better figure out what we're doing. But if it is the big thing that just came out of nowhere, Zach's going to put it on the agenda because it'll be a priority. And so it's soft, but it's very workable, malleable. The work sessions are the challenge in the sense that the calendar gets full pretty quickly when we're in our busy cycles. We are not in a busy cycle right now, which is lovely for us because it's sunny outside and it's nice to have a breather. Our busier cycles are as we roll into the fall and we get around the budget, and then as we're ending the year and moving into the election with bonds and those kind of questions, and then finally the first quarter budget revision and the levy process. These are kind of our busy cycles where these issues become more intense to manage. So right now, not so bad. Some of you have recently learned the challenge of the no meeting Friday, and we try to keep the no meeting Fridays not to be the Friday before a Tuesday when there's a regular meeting. But sometimes matters get involved. Once a month, at least, we allow the staff to have a no meeting Friday, and it's a benefit to the members so you can kind of get out and do other things. But to schedule a work session, to get to the main point of your question, it's really the clerk you want to go through, period, full stop. You make a request to the clerk. The clerk, you can CC the chair or not, depending. It's fine not to. And you can ask in an open meeting at any time, hey, I would like to have a work session on this. But that gets back to the rub of the initiation of this conversation. We're finding there's a tension between, and I think we heard one member say, if you want a work session, this is my item, but I don't care to give it, right? And so that's first time in my years on the body that I heard a statement like that. But that is a functional reality of this work. You are all independent and individual, able to say or not say whatever you want. To Anna's point, sometimes it's to your benefit not to say anything until the time. You have to play the cards in your hand the way you think is best. But the clerk will always be your point of contact to get scheduled a work session in coordination with the chair. I am the chair, not me personally, but the chair is the one who makes the final determination of where it fits in the calendar. But the clerk really has all of the insight into all of the things that are going on and is able to make sure it fits. There's going to be time. It makes sense. Has the staff, all the things that go into it. And it's So all of that is kind of how that is supposed to work. And it feels opaque from lack of experience. Once you've done it a few times, it'll get really clear. And the bottom line is the chair does not really, in my opinion, have the right to deny a work session. And so I'm not in the role of telling members they don't have this or that right, unless it's plainly a violation of the code or outside of the norms and customs that have been allowed. And so I will do everything I can to get your thing scheduled, but I cannot be the knower of all of the things behind every piece of legislation. And just like this meeting, you'll be sick of hearing my voice if I was the one running all of your work sessions. And so this is a member-driven part of our work when it's member legislation on the table. So no answers yet on how we'll do this, but that's the gist. Cameron, you're next.
Let me see if I can remember what I was going to say. So just a couple of good information points. So the master of the list of the work sessions, you're keeping a running list of those. And so you're the person to contact now, but you can't say yes or no to whether there can be or not, right? So if I want a work session, I can contact you to see whether there's availability and what's already on the docket. But in order to put something on that, that's you as chair. Is
And
that
I
correct?
will say yes.
Right. No, I'm just
That's
making
the
sure I
bottom
understand
line.
the process.
Yeah.
And so there is, and there, the other question is, when it's assigned, you said there's a sponsor. There's a name of somebody who's sponsoring every work session that we have. Is that correct?
What I'm saying is the conflict that we're finding ourselves in right now is that there are requests being made for work sessions and there's no connection on the other side. Who is responsible for that?
Right. No,
And so
and I'm really like,
that's-
these
it's
are like
the
the really clarifying
requester.
questions.
Yeah.
Is there currently a person listed? Because there are work sessions that are requested by the administration as well, right? Where they say or a confirmation, I mean, there's not necessarily a person. If it's not a person, it's you're the person, right?
So no, that's what I'm saying here. That is not the case. The administration, we could literally take them off the table of this conversation because when they have a piece of legislation or we have a request for information, they will deliver it. They know who it's them. And we don't have to worry about that because they will show, except in the past administration, sometimes we would request work sessions and they would just ignore us. And so, but at this time and place, we can leave them off the table.
Right. I mean, I'm literally imagining in my head a spreadsheet with dates and with titles, right? And that if it's the administration that is going to bring forth something that that is someone from the administration is going to be. So that's all I'm trying to figure out is that I have requested work sessions before,
Right.
but I've never thought of myself as being the sponsor or responsible for it, which is probably what I should be feeling, right? Because I just say, hey, can we do this? And then I don't know how magic happens and it appears.
Right.
And you show up and you share it, right?
But I don't do the content. And so
Right.
if there is
Right.
someone on the other side willing to do the content,
Right.
then it works.
Yeah.
But if you need a work session, for example, there's a request for a work session, I'll put you on the spot, on the criminalization of homeless code
Right.
section.
Yeah.
And I haven't had an opportunity to talk to the sponsors.
Yeah.
And there's no time between now and then. There's 1 hour where it might work. And so if we schedule it and they say, no, we're not going to do it, which I know they would, because you will make it possible for them to, then we will have that work session. But when a request is made and there isn't someone on the other side
Right.
willing and able, there still might be a reason the person asking for the work session
Right.
pulls the work session together.
Right.
And that might be to show that the emperor wears no clothes, that there's nothing there.
Right. And I am imagining on my calendar a work session titled underneath Cameron Presverdia sponsor, right?
Yeah.
So I know I need to be there.
Right.
I know I need to make sure that I'm prepared for that sort of thing. So is that partly
So,
what you're proposing?
yeah.
Is that maybe not for all,
Yeah.
but there are people who are assigned to that work
So
session? Just
the
clarify
only
that.
thing I've been able to think through is a tentative authorization of a work session. So yes, we can do this. And then we will send an email to the person who requested it confirm you're gonna do it or confirm that they're gonna do it, and it will be made a final approved work session once we have a checklist that says there is going to be somebody here who can speak to the thing, right? Because again, I am no expert on all of these
Yeah.
things, and I need to learn just as much as everyone does. And
That's great. And I just would also, one of the other benefits of that is if I looked on the calendar and saw a work session and saw the title of it and saw that, Yarrow was the sponsor of it, then I know that I can call her and go, hey, I have something to ask you about this work session, because I know that it's connected to her in some way. So that's another benefit of it, that I know that it's not just a random work session that's been planned, that
Right.
somebody actually has a role in it.
And I think that's the right spirit, though. I think my friends-in-law and the clerk's office might caution that call could be a risk under open meetings rules. So
Oh.
run your questions through the clerk as much as possible to ensure we're not in some loophole violation kind of
Cool.
Open
Thanks.
Meetings Act. Daniel.
So I just think, and maybe I already said this, but let's say there's 3 co-sponsors on an AO. And another member who's not one of those co-sponsors has requested a work session because they want more information on that legislation, or who knows, they're for it, they're against it, whatever. I still think that the original sponsors of the legislation should be given the courtesy of an opportunity to present at that work session.
So again, I'll say what I just said and say in context of that, I agree fully. And the way that we're going to ensure that happens is we're going to come up with some kind of a feedback loop, email communication. A work session is requested. We look at the calendar, find a time and place, then communicating to either the sponsors or the requester or both, depending on the dynamic of that specific communication, to get the feedback loop checked off. Yes, everybody is aware. That way we know and have a plan and don't find ourselves in that awkward position. And it's happened 3 or 4 times recently. And it's a me issue, I'm sure, but it's a process issue that is unclear. And so I'm trying to sort that out together with everybody to understand work sessions don't just happen. It isn't magic. As much as it feels like magic, the magic behind it really is the clerk's office and the legislative services who kind of are able to do the preparation for members when the content is based on the work that they're working on. So, Anna.
And also, let's not forget, we have committees. So not that takes the place of work sessions in all instances, but it's another venue.
Right. And so I think that there is, so it's where this started, committees and work sessions and referrals. And work sessions tend to be as you get closer to the item and it's going to be before us, right? The committee process tends to be, again, there's no black and white rules here, but tends to be when you have a little bit more time and you want to deliberate a little bit more and have some help refining your idea, running it through the body that is germane to the question you're working on. And so that is the kind of big picture difference. They aren't the same thing. And a committee provides the opportunity for more robust engagement on the question. It is a place where you can debate ideas more fully. Work sessions are intended to be opportunities to gather information, not to have any kind of substantive debate. And so if I wish Dean were here, maybe I'm going to phone in a friend from the former clerk's office, Barbara. And do you think that's a fair and accurate statement that committees are allowed more robust debate than the work session process? When you sat through 1,000 of these, 1,000. Yeah, so I'm not wrong on that. So ultimately, the committees allow for more robust tactical debates on specific elements within the ordinance or around the concept. You can disagree with your friends and say, no, I think that's wrong. We should do it this way. Whereas in the work session, the goal is to hear the item and gather your questions. What does this mean? How is this working? So that's a subtle difference, but it's an important difference. And the work sessions tend to be towards the end, unless it's a very complex, big project, then you could have a series of work sessions on the item as you refine it toward readiness. So, yeah, go ahead, Erin.
So I just want to repeat back the workflow that you just said to be sure I heard it properly. So the new flow is work session requests go to the clerk with an optional CC to the chair. the calendar is consulted, the requester and the sponsor are both notified. Somehow there's a conversation that happens about who is going to be responsible for the content delivered in the work session. The body gets notified. And if there are advanced questions that people want to submit, those go through the clerk. Is that correct? Great. Thank you.
And you can request the committee chairs to take up the item either informally or formally.
So this could be a both
Yeah.
and. Perfect.
Especially when you get into bigger, more complex items, it is both. Yeah. Go ahead, Cameron.
Just also just in utilizing committees, I'm also curious about whether there could be things at times that are typically work sessions that could go to a committee. So I think that's the other thing that I'd really love for us to consider, that, you know, we often default to work sessions because it's a piece of legislation, we'll do it, that sort of thing. And I just want to encourage the clerk and others to think, okay, could it wait another week and be added to an agenda of a committee? And even confirmation hearings, I think, could be part of a committee if they're related to that committee. So I think I'm curious as to what we could do to utilize that at that time.
I would offer that I think confirmation hearings are a beast unto themselves, separate from almost any other legislation that we work on. The challenge to that theory, and I don't disagree with it where it's feasible, is most members, when they get an item introduced, want that thing passed as soon as they can get it passed, right? And to some degree or another, that is a factor in every conversation. Well, now is the time. I've been waiting. I've been working on this 8 months. Finally, it's here. And you think it's brand new. And so they're not probably interested in, at least half the times, if not more, in waiting another month with their legislation, especially if the item is introduced date specific, which they almost all are. The time when you could make that request would be after the ball is already in motion. And so it's a bit of a challenging thing to navigate. But I agree with your pointer, and I agree with your point. The goal should be, as much as possible, use the committees that are germane so that the committee structures work. And what that depends on, here's the secret sauce: people showing up to the committees who have questions about the legislation. Because if you don't show up and then at the last minute you request a work session because it doesn't fit in your calendar, but it was heard at the committee, everyone's gonna be like, wait, we just talked about this. And so anyhow, those are the subtle pieces of this conversation that are always interesting. And you can see legislative services pacing around the room, putting up slideshows, because this isn't even the important conversation. So now we're gonna turn up, Barbara.
But I do think it's important, and your point is important, and it is that work sessions are different than committee meetings. Remember, there's no public comment at a work session. And the reason there's no public comment at a work session is that it's really not considered a meeting. And so that's why we don't want to debate at a work session. As you said, at a committee meeting, there's public comment or audience participation. So there is a difference.
Yeah, and it's important to use our tools that way. And again, thank you, Barbara, as she said, that there is a difference between the structures, the work session, we don't have public testimony at the end, and they're for information gathering. The committees you can debate at. And so, but this is all stuff the new members will figure out as they go, and it is always evolving in a legislative body. There is no perfect way. The perfect process is the process that learns. So. Say again, Jasmine, go ahead.
So just to the point, confirmation hearings are actually required by code to be a work session. So that's why we do that. And then if you want a work session, reach out to me or Jamie and we'll take care of it.
Sorry, I missed out. Yarrow, go ahead.
I guess at this point, I would just like to ask Cameron, can we put that criminalization of camping on the housing and homelessness meeting as a topic of discussion? I had wanted a work session on that, and I had actually kind of planned on asking for that today, but none of the sponsors are here. And so I think it might just be easiest, considering the conversation that we've just had, to just see if we can put that on that housing and homelessness meeting, because that's next week and it's before.
I have a meeting tomorrow to set the agenda, so I'll bring it into that meeting, and likely the answer is yes.
Okay, thank you.
Ooh, it works. Real time. So,
No meeting Fridays.
yeah, next meeting is a no meeting Friday, so you will not have a work session unless we do it on Thursday next week. Wednesday is a holiday.
Thursday's holiday.
Oh, so
Yeah.
we'll do it Wednesday because Thursday's a holiday.
Yara, will you send me an email request for that so I know what it actually, the title of it is?
Through the clerk.
Yes.
Through the clerk.
Through the
Thanks.
clerk, yes. Okay.
Okay, sorry, ladies. Legislative Services, you have the floor.
All right. For the past couple of years, around this time of year, we review your work plan and just do updates. And it's especially important this year because we have 4 new members that aren't on the work plan yet. And so we are going to go through each section of the work plan, and it's a chance to add your name. If it's an item that only has former members on it and no one else wants to work on it, we can cross it off. So we will go through the list. I'm going to try to keep, last time we did it, we got really in depth and it took 2 whole sessions to get through it all. So I'm going to try to keep us moving along. You don't need to go into a lot of detail about each item, but just a quick update if there are any, and I can update that sheet, and then let me know if you want to be added or removed from anything. And I will skip the ones that are already complete. So we are in the housing action projects, and I think we're on the item support building services through the Title 23. Oh, no, that one, step 1 is, no, sorry. That is the first one. Anna, any update?
No, I communicated with the department. They're taking lead on that one, and I think it'll be brought to the assembly by the fall. So just to say, and if you're interested, just talk to Daniel King and Greg Soule, because it's really a staff-driven thing.
Hold on. I would like to invite members of the administration up to the table here to participate in this discussion.
All right, and I think Daniel King did give an update at one of the last CDC meetings. Continue to make it easier to reuse buildings and update buildings by simplifying nonconformity issues. Any updates there?
Yeah, that one you already have that it's going to P&Z. I intend to meet with planning staff. I have ideas to expand that ordinance, so I'm going to work on that. And others are welcome to join me.
Work with real estate and other partners to research ways MOA can fund housing. Okay.
I'm sorry,
We're-
just process wise, are you going through and saying yes or no at this point and cleaning them out, and then
I'm
we're gonna go
going
back and add?
Yeah, I'm going through, if you have any updates to add on work that's happened that I don't have captured, if you want to add yourself to it or be removed.
Yeah, but we're not adding new project at this point. We're just reviewing what it currently is, right?
Yeah, and then
Okay.
perhaps when we get to the end of each table, you can add new projects.
So we'll be pretty free form here, but the record needs to know who's talking. So Erin,
Yes, this is Erin. I'd like to be added to the real estate housing development funding question.
All right, work with
Work with real estate and other partners to research ways MOA can fund housing development, demolition, et cetera. There's only 2 on that, so can I be the
okay.
third? Great.
Okay. And more than 3 can go on here because it's not necessarily, some of these things aren't a single piece of legislation. There could be multiple projects going on within them. We're not tracking it that closely. Work with ASD on the Totem Theater. We have 3 people working on that. It's in progress.
Would you pop me on there too? Because that has to do with, that's a Midtown thing.
Oh, not even keep.
so yeah, there's room EBD, KB to EBD.
Can I also say with that, I mean, I'm not involved in the conversation with ASD. I think I'm on this because I am working with HLB when it relates to disposing of land in Girdwood, right? So I don't even really count towards the 3 in that conversation.
Right. Great.
I guess I can go on that one since I'm from St. Bridge.
I was gonna say, it occurs to me we could have more than three people because these are like multiple projects within one little
Yeah.
line item. Great.
Federal Archive, oh.
Can I just jump in? Good afternoon, everyone. Suzanne Fleet Green. Great to see all of you back in the Chief of Staff role. Can you add Tiffany on that one so that we have a real estate representative, please?
Great. Also, yeah, let's read all the way through. Well, real estate, she should be up there too, yeah.
Chair.
Cameron.
Yeah, just a question, and I think I'd mentioned this the last time, but there may not be, but there likely may be a link towards all of these in some way to the administration. And this would be the time, I think, to make a note of that, even if it's just a note to saying, even if it's you, but I mean, somebody who, if we're going to continue to work on that project, it may not, but I would just encourage you to speak up just as you did on all of these, if there is some link that you'd like us to have. And also if there is a project you're working on or something currently happening that you know of at this point, we can note that, but then in the future, it's something I'd really love to see something a little bit more aligned between our projects and anything that priorities or things you're already engaged in. So just as a note that this is a working document, we're developing it, it's growing, but using this as a way to begin to find some of those alignments would be great.
Yeah, and that's that last column is
Yep.
specifically intended to do that work.
On that point, can you put under the nonconformity Graham Downey as well, please? Thank you.
Got it. Claire, just substantively for the future, we should add numbers to the items
Yeah,
and
okay,
topic area. That way it's like H1, H1.1.
okay.
Yeah.
This document gets better and better after each review. Federal Archives site, any changes?
I'm in on that too.
Pre-approved plans, that one's up to date. Activate zoning and transit supportive development, that one's in progress.
Can I just ask about that? I'm not one of the folks on that. That's at P and Z. When do we expect to see it come back to the assembly? Like it's September? That's a question for Nolan-ish.
I don't think we have a clear timeline when it'll come back, but it would probably be within about a month of the PZC date.
I believe PZC in July. We're hoping for August for an introduction.
Also, through the chair, I can be added to those two items, the transit supported development corridors and the, well, just that one, the titles one. The other, the site access one, I guess is already done.
When do we throw confetti?
Targeted plan review for the comp plan, I'll remove.
Yeah, I'll just give it up. It is in progress. That's really one that planning staff is leading because it's their job. So I'm continuing to track it, but yeah, I think that one, I don't know if we can keep it on here, but that's kind of, I'm not the one leading it, so.
Okay,
So maybe what actually goes there is not complete, but monitor or participate in, right? Because it really isn't ours.
I picked up on one thing, I just put this as a proposal if you wanted to take it on. They are updating requirements for mobile dwelling units. That was just at PZZ this week. Does anyone want to take?
I
that
would,
on?
yeah, Euro Silvers.
There are, it was at PZZ this week, the proposal to.
Oh, yes, okay, that's right. Yeah.
Zoning
It-
code changes.
Sorry, this is Anna. It allows, it would allow mobile homes in more districts, more zoning districts. I'm not working on, it, but that's what it.
All right, anything else to add to the
Would
housing?
you put me on the mobile dwelling units as well, also?
Go ahead, Nolan.
Yes, through the chair, Graham Downey and I could be added to the mobile dwelling units AO.
Okay,
And I think, Claire, if I'm understanding this, this is, like you said, manufactured
Mhm.
as well. If you could just put manufactured
Yeah.
in the line item description.
I think they're calling it.
Yeah, so maybe take out, maybe just manufactured dwelling units or something. I don't know if that's the correct term, but I think there might be more emphasis anyhow on manufactured, so. We'll get you the formal name momentarily.
All right, and I'm afraid, I feel like I'm gonna be bumping up a time, so I'm gonna keep on rushing. Anything else to add in housing? Okay, you can always email me later. All right, good government projects.
So sorry, going back, it is still mobile dwelling units, but let's just put a / manufactured of the housing in that.
I'll have to figure out the editing later. IGCs, that was one Meg was working on. I don't know if, Anna, are you still gonna work on that?
I'm not actively working on that. We could leave it there for now, though.
Leave it, okay.
Yeah.
Launch community-wide conversation on fiscal future, that is happening.
Yeah, it's early days. I would put Nolan on that, because he and I have been talking about it, the fiscal future. That's a longer term one. It's gonna go into next year.
Explore ranked choice voting, any updates there?
Their item was introduced. There will be a discussion of potential scenarios at the July meeting of the Quality Municipal Services Ethics and Elections Committee. Next month. It's not gonna be this week. It's introduced, yeah. No, it was a month ago.
Communication is in progress. Expand youth employment in parks
So
program.
back on the unification, the admin is working on that, so we can add them. Who's on that team?
That would be Barbara, Marie, probably others, but that's, yeah. There's multiple.
Youth employment, oh,
One question on that is, do you want to add Kim Waller?
I think there's gonna be a long list of people
Okay.
involved, so I
So
would, yeah.
fill in the box later.
Yeah, I think it's just point of contact if someone has a question, yeah.
youth employment and parks expansion. Neither one of them are here today. Using a public process, implement actions from the findings of the animal control strategic plan.
So I have a report back from the administration on this. I have not picked up the next step. And just so you know, Suzanne, there have been some challenges with the animal care and control process, and they're underfunded and their building is falling apart. There's a report that came back from the administration on a request, and it has some very interesting action items. And so maybe at this point, I could add you into that conversation so we could figure out how to move the ball forward to the next steps. And the community did such an amazing job with 75 dogs that we need to build on that.
That sounds good. You might have to, I'm trying to remember. I know at one point the roof for animal control was on one of the past facility bonds.
We need a
Did
whole new
not
facility. Yeah, we just really,
Okay.
and there's a whole bunch. And it's Kim, you and me probably, or it
Right.
could be Kim, someone and me. There has to be an 8th floor nexus. It can't just be the health department.
Okay,
So,
put me on that. I love animals.
and it's, yeah.
It's on the record now. Update public records production process being
So
drafted.
this item is, I think, introduced, right? Did we introduce it yet? No, here's where it is. We handed it to the administration. Falsey is the one working on it. And I think It should be ready to go in August. Maybe we did introduce it. Maybe you can look, Matthew.
It was introduced and it was,
Postponed out to
Postponed.
August.
yeah, and right now the administration is looking at it. And can you add me to that one, please? I've been working on that.
Oh,
one
yeah, now
too.
I'm remembering now.
Yeah, it did get introduced. And so Bill has the ball right now.
After this meeting, I'll go through and add links to AOs and stuff. So I'm just getting enough notes to get me going. Support admin and attaining the recommendations of the 2024 workforce study. I think I've heard that that's in progress.
Yeah, can you add Ms. Froese to that one? And maybe also Ms. Waller. We had a quick conversation about it yesterday, looking to redraft a survey to go out again. So yeah, in progress. Kim Waller, I think.
Oh, yeah. All right, anything to add to
Daniel.
good government?
Yeah, Claire, can we add what I'm gonna help you work on that you presented at Nerd Night as a category under good government, or what are we calling them? Kind of like town halls on the spot.
Civic squares.
Civic squares, that's right.
Ooh, pick me.
Oh, yeah, Aaron's on that too.
I'll send you the recording.
And I think, Aaron, this might be,
Aaron,
it
are
might
you
be
on
the
that?
same item with a broader title. Aaron has discussed at length with me this idea she wants to work on more ways to bring the government out into the community, which I think the Civic Square is an example of, but there's a broader principle there that Aaron had mentioned to me a number of times. And so it could be that under that rubric, you add and other programs or other projects that do such thing.
Yeah, this is Anna. I would suggest we call it civic engagement. I've been meeting with these guys too so yeah, we should combine our efforts, Aaron and Daniel. Because we have a lot of ideas, more ideas than time.
And it's beyond bringing people into our meetings. Like it's figuring out how to take our business to the people. Yeah.
That one you could add me to as well, please, if there's multiple projects.
Economic development, update the comp plan. I heard from planning that that is moving. They've got their money situated. Girdwood comp plan complete.
It's done.
Midtown plan. Any more to add to that one?
On the Midtown plan,
Yeah.
I believe that is still hanging out with PZC.
And this is Anna, we should add either planning or ACD. I forget who's leading that. I mean, planning normally does all the plans, but that's who on the admin side.
Fast track education certificate at UAA. That was Karen Bronga's. Anyone else want to take it up?
Which one?
It was to create a fast track education certificate program.
It's a resolution of support.
Okay, did she ever do the resolution? No. I could take it off. Okay, bring project Anchorage. That's complete. Or
Yep.
new steps might be coming.
Yeah.
Marijuana.
On that
like-
one, can you put myself and Bill on that? I think we do want to come back and talk to you about that.
I am on the new steps train.
Can you add me as well? That relates to the fiscal future stuff.
I'd be interested in being a third on that.
Okay, well, we're having fun. Add Nolan to that as well.
Party.
This is intense, having to remember everyone's last names and initials. Okay, marijuana licensing code, any updates there?
I think we need to check back in with it, but it's mostly done. There are some elements of it that need to come back out and be thought through a little bit more. So it's coming soon, but not quite ready.
Support strategies and potential code changes for, oh, that's a lot. Cottage food, childcare, others.
You can put me on that one.
I'm in for childcare.
And I just started on the cottage food one. And we should put AHD on pretty much all of those, I think. Health department.
Okay. Creative nightlife economy,
You can add me to that one, please.
improving the tourism economy by reimagining the bed tax.
You can add me to that one too, please.
Sign me up.
Yeah.
I'm already involved in that project, so.
Same. I think I'll just say there's a swirl of all of these kind of fiscal conversations and taxes that I think are distinct and all related, so.
So on the creative nightlife, can you put Graham on that one? And then bed tax, you can put Bill Falsey on.
Yeah, Bill and I are working on that one.
Okay, food security initiatives. Oh, did that get introduced?
Yeah, it's an introduced.
Miss George's thing, that got introduced. Can I add a new one to this? Maybe underneath the. Can I add underneath the reimagine the bed tax? So I was going to talk about this at the end of our rules committee meeting when we talk about legislation that we're working on, but I think I'll add it here just so we have it. I have Assembly Council working on researching and drafting a short-term rental tax, which would be in addition to the bed tax, so not a reimagination of it. With the idea that the platforms would collect it like they do the bed tax, but inns and hotels, which are defined in code, would not pay it, just short-term rentals would pay it. So 5% in addition to the 12% room tax. So when you book, it'll have your cleaning fees, it'll have the room tax, it'll have the sales tax, and the person who's booking would know their total when they book. And the idea is that the revenues collected for that would be dedicated to our municipal housing fund, which the Assembly started as a budget amendment in 2024. I think it was members Rivera and Martinez brought that forward, and we amended it down to 500,000, but that is sitting somewhere in a fund. And so I would like to be able to collect from short-term rentals, grow that fund over time so that it could be used to fund things like public-private partnerships, office to residential conversions, putting in utilities where they don't exist and are needed for development, such as Third and Ingra or the National Archives site, or offsite improvements.
I want
So
to jump in there, Daniel, and ask that be a separate item from the one previous right next to it.
that's what I mean. Yeah, it should be its own, but I think right under the bed tax,
Yeah,
just.
I agree.
Yeah.
They're related, and I
Yeah.
just don't want it to be the same one
Right.
because I have notes on short-term rental issues, and I think that they fit closer to what you're talking about than this.
Right.
So, yeah.
Cool.
Thank you, Claire.
Yep.
Not to get into a longer discussion, but it's making me think that for this bucket of issues, whether you would consider making it economic development and affordable anchorage projects, because I feel like we should be hitting both of those messages.
Right, and it also crosses the line with the housing projects that are at the top. And so there might be some reorganization in order as these things start to become clearly aligned in some ways. So yeah, it's fair to do that. Economic development, affordable housing.
And if maybe perhaps a couple other members wanted to add their names to that,
Me.
the bed tax or the short-term rental tax project.
So, and why it's important for the administration to hear that that's coming is that this, if it is an item that comes forward, it is a charter amendment and it would be a question on the ballot for next year. And it's important to recognize that if that is a priority we're working on and there's alignment, then that is one of the things that will be next year on the ballot, which might mean other things aren't going to be there, right? And so it's just an important thing to start thinking about April's ballot and this being one of those areas. So it's that big picture.
I would add my name to that one too.
Because you can do everything, you just can't do it all at once.
Okay, time check. We have 4 more sections. We only have a half hour left in this meeting and a couple other presentations. Do you,
Keep going.
maybe you keep going? Okay. Homelessness projects. Support community members working to develop a pilot. That was Karen Brong. Does anyone want to take that one on?
I might, you can put my name on it.
This isn't a contract, so if you don't do it, you won't get in trouble. Rethink warming centers. Improve MLA response to illegal camping in parks and vehicles.
That's underway.
I just sent you I sent you a spreadsheet just now with priorities for both public safety and for homelessness we can add.
I think you can put me on that one.
So just to Claire's point about there's a bunch of other things, but we should get through this since we're halfway through. There's a briefing on constituent communication tips and a briefing on engaging with members of the public and a newsletter conversation. They may get pivoted to the next meeting. And so, or be very brief, because we should finish this, I think, since we've gotten so far into it.
All right, keep trying to go fast. Secure another hotel conversion.
I think that we should leave that one on there.
What?
I think that we should leave that one on there.
Leave it?
The hotel conversion, yeah.
I
Yeah.
agree.
Do you want to add to it?
You can add me to that one too.
And then Claire, if you'll add another line below the hotel conversion, I intend to reopen the conversation around sanctioned camping.
And then I just sent you 14 lines that you can add below that.
Okay. Assembly business projects. Sure, a smooth transition with the new members complete. New members have really done good. Continue leadership training and succession planning.
Yeah, can you put my name next to that? I think it is something we kind of, we should come back to.
It should be ongoing.
Yeah.
We should bake it into a number of processes. And it's not even about preparing members for this or that. It's, we should always be focused on leadership.
Okay, continue to develop the youth rep program. That is moving along. Develop a more manageable workload. Failed, no.
No, it's actually working.
It is?
It's working. Things are slowing down.
Continue to strengthen and protect the election system. Anything to add there?
So that's in the ranked choice conversation. It's kind of, they're tied together. And again, there's no value that we are going to get to the ranked choice. The conversation is going to happen.
I suppose you could add the election bill in the legislature too.
Monitoring.
The ranked choice, is that envisioned as going to the ballot or?
There's multiple ways. That's the meeting in July. So come to the Ethics and Elections Committee, Quality Municipal Services, Ethics and Elections. There's a decision tree that has to be kind of sorted through.
Okay, thank you.
Grow and improve the aid program. We are working on that. Jennifer Venneklassen in our office is going to take on more support for aides, including she's going to start forwarding talking points as we get them from admins. We've got an email list with your current aides, and then just checking in with them once a month to make sure they have their resources. So we're going to start upping the support we provide aides. Onboard a third assembly attorney.
So we are still working on that.
Continue to tie the work plan into the seamless to the committee structure. It's in progress, I think. You did secure at least 2 of our requests in the legislature, so that's a success.
Yay.
Woo.
Well, the governor's process is concluding this week. We'll see.
Well, no, there was wildfire money in the supplemental budget, which is already finished. And he did sign or let go the Chugach Park easement, so that's
Okay,
passed.
good.
You got to,
We got
no matter
to.
what happens.
Claire, my question is, do you want to just let this one continue new priorities, of course, but
Yes.
make it more generic? And then I would recommend you put state legislature and federal government. And you can put Nolan and myself on there as admin contacts.
So I'm part of this, it might be a new item, but for us, we should have a line that is to track the lobbyists' efforts on specific projects. I had a call from somebody who wanted to bid on the lobbying contract that came up and said, where do I go on the Muni website to find out what projects you're advocating for? And there was no place, and it was interesting. And there might be reasons why you don't list everything, but we should contemplate tracking that in a way that allows all of us to have insight into what we're working on.
Anything to add to this section? Okay, public health and safety. The first one's in progress. I'll do some updates on that later. Invigorate the Tudor Elmore development plan for a grocery store.
So I think you should swap Karen for Aaron.
Yep. Wildfire safety.
You can put me on that one.
Any updates?
Yeah, and there's one on mine that's aligns to that, so you could each just merge them.
Funding streams for Girdwood and Chugach Eagle River cemeteries.
Ongoing.
Yeah.
No one else jumping on that.
Develop a program for licensing and inspections of massage establishments. Jamie was working on that. No updates.
Who was working on that?
I was working on that with Jamie Hines. And interested in keeping that conversation going. I don't know if anyone else wants to jump on that, but that's semi-dormant at the moment.
Meg had us take this one off, but I think there's some movement on it. So maybe you want to add it back?
Yeah, I
the
think we want to add it back.
Alaska
I
Center for
have one in
Training.
there on that one for me, so you can add that back and put me on it.
Yeah, would you add me to that item as well?
And then you can add me to this one as well.
The crisis now continuing.
Identify, yeah.
Anyone else want to go on that one? Okay, work with real estate to update the Chugach Senior Center. I imagine that the new members will want to jump on that. or-
Yeah, and I should be on that one too, if I'm not. And in fact, we're waiting, Suzanne Kent had been asked to provide a building inspection because of all the damage that happened out there in some quick succession, and that was about 2 months ago. And so it'd be great to follow up on what the status of that is. Because we did a series of emergency appropriations, and at that point it became clear we need real insight into what's happening.
Was Greg part of that conversation too, or just Ken?
I only had direct communication with Kent,
Okay.
so I don't know on the back end.
Anything to add to this section? Public
And
health.
I should say,
safety?
you should take Jared off of that. Because I
Oh, he
believe
works-
he works there, and so let us not get him in hot water.
Okay. Infrastructure and transportation. I don't think there's anything new to, oh, well.
Would you add me to
Meg-
the first item, please?
Yeah, wait, that was Aaron.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's
Like Clutha River?
Can you add me to the stormwater utility? Last item on this page.
And I would like to
Done.
be
There's
added to
another bell to
the,
ring right there.
I'd like to be added to the stormwater utility as well.
That one's done, Claire. Oh, you got it noted there.
What?
Support the administration in securing a contractor. So we've got a contractor. Now the job is monitor progress of the construction of Terminal 1.
Chris, you're not on that, but should you be?
I should be. And Aaron, you should be on that one because of your vice chair role.
Okie dokie.
No one escapes support. Integrate LRSAs and RRSAs into the annual Community Council Capital Project Survey. Any updates from admin on that? I don't think it happened this year.
I'll say for that, and then it's somewhat related to the preceding item relating to CASA. Randy and Karen were both very involved in those projects, and they're both gone now. So if anyone else has an interest,
So Suzanne, on that one, there's an endless and ongoing tension between ARTSA and the LRSAs on how things are picked and what the priorities are set. And so one of the key functions is to figure out a really fair process for reviewing the 6-year plan, making sure there's input from both folks who live and work in the ARTSA districts and then the others. And so that's a work in progress. Ona's been working on it really with folks, and it's getting better. We had a kind of closer than we've ever been before. And so that's a kind of an ongoing little flare point.
Okay, you said Ona's been working on that?
Yeah, because I mean,
Yep.
coming up with a capital, a CIP is really through them. And so, but the process by which it's developed is the contentious part.
I think Chelsea Ward Wall was also helping out on that one. If I just might add with the stormwater, I know it already sounds like we have more than enough cooks in the kitchen, but it is a topic of interest. So if space opened up, I'm interested in that project.
It's an enterprise, so you need to be on that one.
And a utility.
And, sorry, it's a utility, yeah. It's key that you're both on.
Continue to promote safe streets as part of Vision Zero. Aaron,
Sign me up.
How did you guess, Claire?
You can put me on that one too.
Yeah, and you can take me off of that one, not because I don't care. I just literally cannot right now.
We love a boundary.
And it wants the streets
Yeah.
for the continue to track energy issues. Any?
You should probably,
Not broad at all.
yeah. You should
We just
probably
have to
put me on
track
there.
them.
If we're talking about like waste to energy and those kinds of things, then you can drop me on there.
If that's what we're
Yeah.
talking about, put me in there as well.
I think this is waste to energy. This is solar roofs on municipal buildings. This is potential deployment of electric vehicles, efficiency, that whole basket.
I think it's also the running out of cook inlet gas and pushing the state to do things.
And if I could, Mr. Chairman, of note, Solid Waste Services now has a sustainability coordinator on staff, and that's Rochelle Johnson. And she'll be pretty key to all of those things.
All right, create and adopt a long-range transportation. That's complete. You're done. So two things to.
I
Oh, you
would-
got one to add?
Sorry, I need to add something. Would you please add an Anchor Rides fare and technology overhaul?
Okay. So I think it's been set for a work session in July, a budget session to set your priorities for the 2026 budget. And so once that is done, we will load those up into here so you can track them as well.
So before you move on, Suzanne, one of the things that happened in the interim, when Felix was chair, we started a process by which in about July, August, the assembly convened to discuss budget priorities. The mayor's first letter on the budget is, I think, October 1st. And so the intent was, and this was the Quinn Davidson time, not the Bronson time, was to set out clear budget priorities that we have, identify where we share, and then ideally figure out a way to minimize conflicts by November. And so, and at one point it got so bad, we told the administration, the Bronson people, these are our priorities. We want to work with you. Nope, not your job, separation of powers. And when it came down to it, they didn't realize that we have to approve the budget. And so we approved the budget we were going to approve, and they refused to implement it, and it created a massive storm until they bowed because the power is ours. And so the goal of this July, August conversation is to make October easier for you. Instead of trying to read our minds, we're in a conversation together so that the mayor can establish her priorities at the same time understanding our priorities, and then November is way easier. So that's that item.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Who facilitates that?
It's just a work session. It's a pretty informal conversation here. We might do a retreat, go across the street, have a conversation, but it's pretty much just like this. We're just going to talk about the budget. So, yeah.
One more comment on this topic. At a previous discussion, there was a thought about prioritizing these or if it's better just to have a big laundry list. We changed the public language on the document saying that this is not endorsed by all members. It's a list of what everyone wants to work on. So nothing to decide today, but just next steps. If you ever want to, at a retreat, maybe prioritize some of these, or if you just like having the big laundry list, that's up to you guys. That is all I have. Thank you.
All right. So I think that it's, rather than trying to dive into those three very substantive items, those will go, if there's no objection, into unfinished business, and we'll pick them up next month. And that way we can get on to the members' updates on pending business for the last few minutes. I will ask, is there any member of the public who wishes to be heard under audience participation? I don't hear or see anyone, so we'll consider that item has been taken care of. We'll start then, Mr. President, if you want to list anything or not, current projects that you want to put out there.
Let me pass, and then come back to me, please.
Sure. Zach?
Yeah, thanks. So Megan and I had a project we started about 6 months ago relating to dangerous rental properties and protections for tenants. That project is ongoing, but I'm the only person on it right now. So if anyone else wants to jump in, you're welcome, but I am going to give you the warning that we do have an ordinance that's close to introduction, and the next meeting to discuss it with the internal working team is in 10 minutes. So
How long do you expect that meeting will be?
it's scheduled for an hour, and we might use most of it, but not that anyone's obligated to stay for the whole time. I also think it's something that probably once we have something for the body, we'll go to a committee or work session. So won't be your only opportunity, I think, to see it before action.
Might jump on that with you, and I'll go in for part of the meeting.
I would like to, I can only sit in for the first like 25 minutes, but my radar's peaked.
Long enough for you guys to get a sense of what's going on.
Aaron?
Zach and I are working with Mr. Falsey on short-term rental registration. And that project, I think, would maybe be an interesting one to talk about and how we would sequence that with Mr. Vollen's work.
I would love to go on that one.
You were online. Okay, that's why. Okay, well, him too.
Okay, Anna?
Yeah, thanks. Just a few updates. First, I'll just remind folks, Budget and Finance Committee is not meeting on the 19th. It already got canceled, and I saw it's still on our calendar, so I noted just to make sure that's listed as canceled. Follow up from Tuesday's meeting, the self-storage thing, I'm working on an S version. I'm happy to join with others. I didn't include other members on it because I didn't know who wanted to be dealing with whatever I said on the record on Tuesday. The Public Safety Task Force is getting organized. We are going, at least Felix and I are going to the Police Relations Task Force tomorrow just to chat with them. Anyway, more on that soon. Unification or Muni 50th, I brought that up before. Just putting out, I'm going to keep putting out an open call to members to think about in your districts, you have many different communities, some of which have long histories. And so if there's events already happening in the fall or things that they might be interested in, we're doing not one giant event, but a whole bunch of little programmed events. And they don't all have to be Muni led. So just encouraging folks to think creatively there. And I think that's my updates for now. Thanks.
What does your S version do?
TBD. It's, I heard the discussion. Yeah, I mean, we have 9 minutes, so I don't want to take a bunch of time here, but my intent is to get it on the agenda for July. So if there's 2 other people who could join it, so.
Yarl? Any projects you want to tell folks you're working on? It's okay if you don't.
I'm working on a few projects, but I don't think I'll talk about them right now.
That's poker. Cameron, you ready? You don't have to report, but.
Nope, I'm good.
Right, so I have a few things, so I'll let you know. You all, not all of you, before some of you were here, we approved a park dedication for Track J. And so there's a slight boundary change required in collaboration with the port. And so you'll see pretty soon an ordinance that kind of repeals and reenacts the dedication with a slight different boundary change. And some what are they called? Plat notes that will protect the interests of folks. And so that's coming. You'll see on the agenda of this meeting, that discussion we had, I think, last month on the postponement process and should the vote be undebatable. And the item was introduced by Mr. Rivera and I. It's undebatable. However, there's a custom allowed that the mover of the motion would be able to make a short statement on why. And if the mover is different than the sponsor will also be able to make a short statement on why. And so that's the resolution we came up with. That will also include a second part, which is a change to some of the meeting procedures. I am engaging in a project. I'm hoping to get some support from the administration. Becky and I have talked about it. And there's an analysis of unencoded, if you will, rights of way, but it has become apparent that rights of way have been captured and are being used by for-profit entities and even fenced in without permits. And it's in more than 1 or 2 locations. And so public property is being used for private interest. And I'm doing some analysis of that to figure out what we need to do. It's a conversation about public rights of way. Next, if you may have heard that the Matsu has announced that they're implementing a 7-cent motor fuels tax. And so we have a 10-cent motor fuels tax. And the screaming and shouting of it at the time was that everyone's going to go out to the valley. No, what ended up happening is the valley gas stations just raised their price 10 cents and are making profit. So now they realize they need the resources. Well, we can't, in my opinion, not do the same. Otherwise, we're just going to see our prices go up and no public benefit. And so a proposal will be coming forward on that. I missed the meeting with the school district, but I heard it got real interesting at the end. And interesting being there is no real Robert's Rules procedure or code procedure for how we count votes in a joint meeting with the school board. So the school board meeting, the joint meeting 4 times a year is in the charter. It's not like a code thing. It's not like even Native Village of Eklutna, which we love, which is in the code. This is in the charter. And so the question being, do both bodies need to have an affirmative vote of a majority for the vote to be considered a yes vote, a prevailing vote? And so there's a conversation underway where if the bodies individually convene as a group, do we count that group as an entity, or do we still count it as separate? So we're going to have a conversation with the school district and amongst ourselves about how we want to structure that. This is one of those 230 sections of the code where it's up to us because the rules are silent and it creates confusion and people just have to make judgment call decisions on the fly for the lack of clarity in the procedures. As Yara had pointed out, there is a public records AO that's been introduced. We'll be seeing some action on that soon. I think Bill might need a little fire under his tail because August is going to get here and we'll hear at the end, oh, we have concerns, which we heard before. And then that will say, well, we need more time. So now is the more time part of the conversation. And then finally, the ranked choice conversation, it's introduced next meeting. Here's the rub on that. There are really three paths we have seen. You can't just by code move to a ranked choice conversation or vote style with the mayor because the charter has some pretty specific language. And so that language would have to change. So only the voters could implement ranked choice with the mayor. The code is really clear that we could set up our voting procedures however we want for ourselves. And so we could convert to a ranked choice for the assembly. So there are three real options that I see, and this will be the conversation, the values proposition next month. There's the do nothing alternative. Just don't do anything. This works, let it be. The second alternative is do the assembly as a test case and see if it works. And then if that works, then move forward with the charter amendment proposal to the voters. The challenge is we don't have a primary system in our municipality, and most ranked choice voting procedures operate with a primary, which screens out the 30 people who would randomly want to participate. And so jurisdictions who have managed this have done it by using a petition process. You get a number of signatures, then you're allowed on the ballot. I don't know that we want to go that way. That's part of the conversation. I know it's interesting. And so then the third way is, and it would suffer the same dilemma of some kind of a process by which we would reduce the number of potential names, would be do it all at once by charter amendment, the assembly, the mayor's office. And so that'll be the conversation in July. So again, do nothing, do just the assembly and test, do everything all at once. So that's the layout of the conversation coming forward. So with that, then, anyone else have anything before we adjourn? Administration? Thank you for being here and welcome again. And then we're adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Have a great, oh wait, we have a meeting tomorrow. Do we? No meetings tomorrow? Tomorrow's a